Maria McCann, thank you so much for joining me on the AI6 podcast.
I am so excited to be here. It's fab, Joanne. Delighted.
So, listen, you're an organisational psychologist by trade. What is that?
Okay, so an organizational psychologist is someone that really looks at how you empower the people that are driving your organization to succeed. And how do you do that? By making them feel confident, comfortable, excited about things that you're doing. What does that actually look like? So, a lot of change management principles and really embedding a culture of success and happiness and making people happy. It's something that I became very passionate about a good few years ago. And it's funny, it was when I had a bad experience that I went, I really want to go back and study how do you actually support people in their jobs to actually get the most out of it so they can thrive in their environment. Because it takes so much of our time up, Joanne. Like, we're doing work a lot of the time. So you should be enjoying it, not just basically being there and being dragged through it. So how do you do that?
And of course, you talk about human centered transformation. And I don't think this has ever been as important as now in the AI age. And you've
Yep.
seen that transformation. And you've been using AI for many years through your work in Ireland and the UK, specifically in healthcare, right?
Yes, specifically worked in healthcare and digital transformation for about 10 years, leading large scale transformation programs of work across Ireland. And then worked with some of the UK government departments as well on looking at how they actually transformed their organization, and specifically looking at how digital and people centered, human centered mindsets can actually drive the organization forward by utilizing technologies the right way. So anything I ever did with my team, even though it was very technically based and it was a lot, as you know, around, especially in healthcare, was a lot around legislation and governance and data. It was all about people. So it was all about making sure that my teams felt confident and comfortable, not to know all the answers, because that's not where the world is ever, but confident and comfortable to be able to put the hand up and say, look, we don't know how to do this. Can you help us? Can you find out a way for us to do it? Who do we have to reach out to in order to get that information to do the right thing?
And one of the areas is psychological safety. And this is particularly important in the age of AI. And,
Yes.
AI is moving at lightning speed. But how do you think this is affecting how safe people feel to experiment and to take risks? Only today, somebody said to me, Joanne, I feel paralyzed
Mhm.
because what if I get it wrong? How can
Yep.
people feel safe in this new age where there isn't really a rule book yet?
There's not. And even like when I look at how we looked at it before, digital transformation, psychologically safe environments were maybe not being created the way they should be, full stop. And then with AI, Joanne, you're so right, it's moving so fast that, like, even I get overwhelmed. And I don't love change. I don't think anyone else does, but I love technology and opportunities and innovation and learning. Like, you love learning new things, but everyone can feel overwhelmed with AI, because one minute it's basically use ChatGPT. The next minute somebody's saying, "Oh no, I've heard about Claude. Here, has anyone heard about Perplexity?" And there's all these different, and that's just the Gen AI. This is not even the big, massive AI large language models that are being implemented to change how people are actually delivering technology at scale. So there's so much change happening that can actually make your foundations feel a bit rocky. So you might feel like you're confident in one area, and then next thing your organization's like, let's try this and look at this in a different area. I think the principles remain the same. That if your organization is supporting that psychologically safe environment, which is the secret sauce for innovation, I cannot tell you how helpful and accelerating it is when people feel that confidence. If that foundation is there and you flip from using one AI technology and are told to try and use a different one, that you feel that you can actually say, I don't really know how that's going to work, or I disagree with you. What we're actually doing is the right way forward. We should be looking at this instead of this, and then maybe considering a change in the future. Having that in position and that foundational position is needed more than ever, because the overwhelm is huge. I had it myself. I went to my friend Rachel's house, and she was showing me a deadly new platform for AI. And because my head wasn't in the right space because of external factors, change that was going on personally with me, I was like, Rachel, I can't. I actually am going to have to come back to this because I'm overwhelmed by the opportunities, but it's actually making my head spin. And she was like, I know it's hard to get your head around. So, as leaders in public sector, you need to be able to keep that calm for people to say, it's okay if you're like, I'm scared of that, or it's okay if you want to come back to it. But we will be here to educate, support, because we believe there's opportunities here that will help Irish citizens. So creating that environment where people feel safe, that they can actually put their hand up.
Now, another question is around organisational readiness, and you've a whole dissertation on this. I don't know if anyone feels ready to completely jump into AI, and I hear the reasons why they're not. But how do you get ready to be ready for transformation?
And this again, like it's such an interesting concept, because change management a lot of the time looked at all these different types of like steps and stages, and there's many different change management frameworks that can be looked at. But with AI and the rate of technological pace and how things are going so quick, I think you could be in phase 1 going into phase 2 of a framework. So you could be in like pre-contemplation going into contemplation, and then everything changes again. So you're like, oh, mother of God, what am I going to do? So how do you then basically layer the new change in on top of the old change, and people are confused? So this framework around readiness, I think, is maybe a nicer one to keep employees and the employees in the public sector feel sort of as if you're on one path. So it looks at emotional, intentional, and skills. So like those 3 high level around what you do to actually be ready for change. So emotionally, how do you feel emotionally about the change? How are your public sector leaders, your world, talking to you about the change, setting the vision, communicating transparently about what we need to do and what the steps are, or what the changes are? So how do I actually believe and trust in what we're doing as a government department? Then 2, intentionally, what's our plan? So is there a plan created for us as a department? Are we actually looking at following a certain framework in order to deliver that? Do I feel confident in that plan? And then the third one is skills, Joanne. And it's, are we actually educated? Are we supported in order to embrace this new change that we're doing? Do we feel that we have the necessary skills and resources available to actually like move forward with it? So those 3 sort of readiness for change pillars are really, really important. Layers, I actually think looking at change management frameworks, I'm looking at that again myself from a research point of view, because it's changing too fast. So all those frameworks are changing too fast. They're always have been reiterative, and you might have popped back into one, popped back into another. But I think in this new world of fast change, the frameworks of change implementation might change, but those pillars are really foundational to helping people feel confident.
And then the practicalities of how generative AI in particular is changing our daily working or our working days, from operations, productivity, ideation, creation of assets. What are you seeing?
Ways of working is unreal, because we went from basically delivering things in a certain way, engaging with each other in a certain way. So COVID upended all of that with basically the remote. Then it became the hybrid. Then we have lots of employees being brought back to work. Then we have other employees that are fully remote. And there is this change of remote working and engaging, full stop. How we actually engage with each other, stakeholders, customers, everything is not really settled and is in lots of different ways and for lots of different departments and different people. So that's one way. Then how you actually utilize the different technologies available to you, such as Gen AI, using it as a personal AI assistant, how that impacts what you do on a day-to-day basis. Does that make maybe Joanne really flying ahead in her work and actually being able to deliver more? And then Maria, who's not educated or supported to actually use that technology, fall behind or feel like I'm falling behind? So how does that affect each of us in our own environments, because we're doing it in personal life as well? So ways of working, I think, is changing like incredibly. And even when I look at, I'm a member of a few different groups, and what we used to find is that people were really excited to meet each other in person, and then all of a sudden people were dropping back from meeting each other in person, and things were getting so busy again, they were like, well, we can do it online. And then that innovation wasn't happening because people weren't in person or weren't having that face-to-face contact. So it's very, very different to what it was. I don't know what it's going to look like. It's something I'm genuinely talking to a couple of universities about, how actually I can do some research in that area, specifically in AI, digital transformation, and how we actually work with each other and with different organizations as well, because it's changing so rapidly. But if we don't look at it from a cultural point of view, ensuring that we're actually putting the lens in the right place for different people and their personalities. So if Joanne wants to work remotely and feels very supported to do that, are we sure that is going to support her mental health in her work? Is she going to be happy doing that forever? Or maybe does she only want to do it for 6 months? And then it just changes because of your environment, what you're doing. There's a lot to look at in that space. And I think it needs to be researched an awful lot more to ensure that we're supporting people within public sector, especially as well.
So, ethics and data governance is one area where there's a lot of nervousness. We know that AI for good is driven by good principles, openness, transparency, building ethics into all of those frameworks. But then data and governance, because what is AI? AI learns from the data. Talk to me about how you organize your data and how you protect it and how you can really leverage AI, but with your audiences, whether it's the public, whether it's your customers, trusting you with it and trusting your outputs.
Yeah. And that trust thing is so key to anything to do with AI. And that is like, I think it's such a multi-pronged approach, because you have to be working in collaboration with your technical and digital teams to understand what are the guardrails that are in place for us to actually be able to use the data that we have. So how are we protecting it internally? What are we allowed to do with that data from an internal protective space? Because public sector data is so personalized for Irish citizens. There's so much information in there. We had the cyber attack a few years ago, and it has to be protected in a very, very strong way. So that openness, transparency from the digital or technical teams, in order for people to understand what they can do, how they can do it, ensuring that if they're actually using that data within the organization, that they actually have a safe space that's protected to do that. And a lot of different organizations, private and public sector, are creating their own large language models where they can actually use it for analysis themselves as well. So it's that tech team. Then it's the data and governance committees. So those different ethical groups that have been set up to actually govern the data and make the decisions about where the data will be used, shared, and what that looks like. So those governance committees are key to, in order to actually speed up, accelerate innovation around that data in a safe way. So if there's multiple stakeholders as part of that governance group, they can all give their inputs as to what the right thing to do is and why. And then people feel safe actually being able to follow that process. So those governance groups are key to that. Key.
You and I are both passionate educators. We love sharing our knowledge openly and freely. And you mentioned equity when it comes to AI, especially around knowledge, because if I excel and embrace AI quicker than my colleague, well, who's going to get the promotion? It's
Yeah.
going to be me.
Yeah.
And you also talk about the distinction between knowing and knowing how. How
Yes.
do we tackle education in this new world?
I think that's an approach that needs to be looked at on a department basis, depending on what AI they're using, and then looking at the level of literacy amongst their team as well. So they have to really understand the unique individual needs of the people within their team and what's expected of them. So that knowledge management, education has to be looked at really, really clearly, because people can know, so they can do research, or AI can tell us what the research should be and what we should be doing. And if you know prompt engineering or you get au fait with it, then people are able to do that themselves. What happens a lot now as well, specifically with AI, and we've seen the trends and the research behind it, is that people are actually going and educating themselves. So it's not universities, it's not long courses that are being developed. It's people actually trying themselves, going in short micro learning credentials and making sure that they're trying to keep up to speed with it because they've an interest in it. And that's hard, because people that have an interest in it are going to learn and know more. And then if they're using that knowing and using it within their work, then they're knowing how to do it. So they actually learn more by the doing, the same way all education has worked before. But if they're nervous about it and they're not actually, maybe they don't understand how to go and learn more themselves using AI to actually facilitate that learning, they then fall behind a little bit more as well. So they then start to get that fear again, that they're not keeping up with everyone else. So that real strong approach of looking at foundational literacy around AI and what it actually means to your team is really important. I remember even when we were doing digital transformation, I developed about 2 or 3 different national courses in the HSE. One was around innovation and ambassadors for innovation, where people were quite technically literate and really like data literate, digitally literate. And they looked at how they use change management principles and curiosity and user-centered design. And then we created another program, which really was, Joanne, around the foundations of digital literacy. And at the time before we launched it, we got a bit nervous that people would be like, we know how to do that. That's easy. But it was welcomed with open arms, and it's now still being ran through the nursing and midwifery department, because it's foundational to people understanding how to use the tools that they actually have. AI is the same. It's not having that perception that everyone knows about it just because you do or I do or we're interested or enthusiastic. That's not where everyone's at. So you really need to look at the literacy across the entire department and ensure that you're bringing that skill set and that education to the right level for the people within your department as well. It's paramount. If you do that, it's massively supportive to people. They feel trust in you as a leadership as well, because they know you're trying to upskill them and that they're not trying to be left behind.
So we've spoken about many of the barriers to fully embracing AI, but if we successfully overcome the challenges, talk to me about the big opportunities you see AI providing organizations.
I actually think it's overwhelming. Like when I sat with my friend there last week, I literally was like, oh my God, the opportunities to take repetitive tasks away from people, and especially public sector organizations, to be able to remove those repetitive tasks and create them in an automated way, which gives me as a public sector worker time to actually spend with the public. Those frontline in conversations where you can actually engage with the public and emotionally connect in a better way, because you've got the time and you're not having to do all the admin associated with what the processes are as well. So that engagement, can you imagine, Joanne, being able to actually spend more time with the public sector employees that you're working with? The level of trust you would have, the level of satisfaction, the fact that you would actually feel connected more as well. It would be massively impactful from even that process perspective. Then if you flip it and look at like the AI and what it could do from a large scale transformation point of view. So there's the repetitive tasks and then there's the large scale transformation it could do. The things that people have looked at globally for health are mind-blowing from a diagnostic point of view. The things that it can actually do with the multiple pieces of data that we would have across health, where it can actually collate all of that in a way that we as humans would never be able to do in that time span. And then that's able to give us back information that the humans that actually have the knowledge, the experience, can take that and then make informed decisions, because they're the ones that are going to have that information to enhance what they're doing. So technology and AI will enhance the capability of the amazing humans that are working in public sector as it is. But from repetitive tasks, giving people more time to actually do the jobs they enjoy doing, helping the public, having those face-to-face conversations more, through to the large-scale transformations of taking data, analysing it, and able to give back insights that the government can use to actually make better policy decisions and better decisions to actually do different processes for public, full stop, is really exciting, really, really exciting. And that joined up thinking as well across departments that sometimes, because of the size and the complexity, are actually siloed. It's really exciting.
Now, leaders are by their very nature, that's why they're in the roles. They're adaptable and agile. But I tell you what, there might be quite a few, and it's completely understandable. I mean, I'm a business owner. I have to lead into change too, but it's so scary. Like you may have some people going, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't have the tenacity or the staying power for this, and maybe I'm going to hang up my leadership boots. But what do leaders need to be doing right now? What's the capability that every public sector leader around AI needs?
I am massively passionate about resilience. So when I was working, I went through three different crises during my time working in health. So there was COVID, there was the cyber attack, and then there was the Ukraine crisis, where I led the national response for the HSE and data. And I kept saying to my different teams at that time, once we get through this one, it'll be okay. Once we get through this one, it'll be okay. And we were being asked to create business continuity plans as to what we would do in the face of another crisis. What would the business operations look like? So here's our day-to-day running, what that looks like. But then what would the crisis operations and business continuity look like? And I remember then just going to my team and saying, okay, this is never going to change. I am completely wrong. So we need to look at resilience internally. So I created and ran resilience programs that I've delivered to other public sector organizations in Ireland as well, about how you actually become resilient yourself and how you be aware of your other teammates' resilience factors and what that looks like. So what's your emotional spiritual, mental, and physical resilience buckets. And how do you keep them full? And be aware of people within your teams that are going through their own stuff, not just within work, but externally. We've all got our own stuff going outside our life that actually impacts us as well. And how can we support each other, be resilient as a department, as a team? What does that look like? I looked at the World Economic Forum's 2030 top skills that they need to have. Resilience is one of them. So there's a few up there all around, obviously, like AI, algorithms, creating basically user-centered design, still a lot around like leadership, resilience, and actually curiosity, self-awareness, those soft skills that are needed. Resilience, I think, is a big one because things keep changing. So as a leader, you need to be able to breathe and be able to support your team around you as well. So that would be my big one.
All right. To end with a quick fire round of 3 questions.
Okay.
What's one public sector AI innovation you're excited about?
Oh man. Okay. So I would have to say, look, I'm probably going to go back to actually 2. There's one in health, which is the HSE Health app that may not be using AI at the moment. It's a way for us to connect with our health data and the health service in general, but it is going to be bringing in AI at some stage. And I think it is massively exciting because it's patient empowerment. It's us actually having hold of our own data and being able to interact that way. So that's one that's really exciting. And there's stuff that the government are doing all around life events and how we can actually have joined up thinking across government departments. I think that is incredible. There are going to be some really, really cool stuff in there. And really interesting stuff. Like I think Ireland's doing incredibly well from AI. It's been looking that they had the AI Government Council a good few years back that was set up. Niamh Smith announced stuff there a couple of months ago about how they're doing different collaborations with CEDAR, the learning department for AI, and how they're actually looking at that for public sector, which gets me really hopeful for us as citizens about the things that are going to be coming through the public sector. There's lots and lots of different things, I think, happening in public sector.
What's the biggest myth about AI in government?
I think maybe that because maybe we don't see it or we don't hear about it very loudly, that it's not happening. So I think it's that, whereas it's understanding, I suppose, whenever it's public sector, it's data, it's our data that the government are going to be very carefully and considered about how they roll out AI initiatives, and they're going to make sure that they do the pilots first to ensure that everything is safe for us as citizens. But it's that belief that it's not happening when there's incredible things being done by incredible people.
I think that's a great answer. And then finally, what is your personal North Star when leading change?
Okay, so my personal North Star probably would go back to supporting people to be resilient. So if you are resilient yourself as a leader, if you are like resilient and calm and connected to what you know is happening in your life and how you can be more resilient to support your team, and then you can teach that resilience to your team members, because public sector employees are continually going to be facing different types of crises, be they small, medium, or large, but that is a constant for them. It's never going to change. So I think it's about bringing it back from technology and from AI and different transformations, and getting your team and that culture in your team ready for change, ready for resilience, that they feel that they're actually protected and supported. So how do you do that? That would be my North Star. Making people feel empowered that they can thrive is an incredible place to have your team.
I love it. Well, listen, Maria McCann, always a pleasure to have these conversations. So smart, and you've so much information to share. And I really want to appeal to listeners and to viewers to go and connect with you on LinkedIn, because you're very active on LinkedIn as well, and you're always open for a conversation about this stuff.
Always love having a chat, Joanne, as you know. Love having a chat.
Well, listen, thank you so much and continued success.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you.